You're just a nanny with a dream. My sister screamed it while bouncing her baby on her hip, her voice slicing through the backyard like a lawnmower blade catching a stone. The laughter came fast, my uncle choking on a swig of beer, my cousin slapping his thigh like he'd heard the joke of the century, and my mother pressing her wine glass to her lips to hide the smug smile forming underneath. And me? I stood still beside the grill, hands folded politely in front of me, pretending I hadn't just been reduced to a punchline. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Emily, don't take it personally, my mother said with faux sympathy, her southern twang dipping sweet like poisoned honey. A woman your age, watching someone else's kid while dreaming of what? Writing a children's book. Her laugh was quiet but sharp. That's adorable. My knuckles tightened around the napkins I held, the edges of the paper digging into my palms. I'd come to this family barbecue in good faith. I wore a floral sundress, kept my hair neat, brought peach cobbler from scratch, and yet it only took one sentence from Jessica to undo everything. Dream big, sis, Jessica smirked, tipping her glass. But maybe dream realistic next time. I heard that word again, nanny, like it was synonymous with invisible, or helpless, or less than. Never mind that I'd helped raise her child while she went on yoga retreats and spa weekends. Never mind that I worked 12-hour days for a man who trusted me more than his own family. Never mind that I'd once sold my car to keep my sister's lights on, and she never even knew. I said nothing, not because I was weak, but because I knew what was about to walk through the garden gate. The second the latch clicked behind me, I felt it. Every head turned as his polished shoes touched the patio. He didn't say a word at first. He just walked straight past the confused stares and shocked faces and stopped at my side. Nathan Hale, the man I had worked for, the man I'd kept secret, the man who now, in full view of my family, took my hand and laced his fingers with mine like we'd done it 1,000 times before. My sister's face fell. What is he doing here? She stammered, shifting her baby to the other hip. Nathan didn't even glance at her.
He looked only at me.
I couldn't let you face them alone, he said softly. And then he turned toward the rest of the backyard.
Come.
Collected. Unshakable. She's not just your nanny, he announced. She's my wife. Silence. Even the birds seemed to hush. She's what? My mother breathed. Nathan pulled something from his coat, crisp, folded, and deliberate. He handed it to Jessica. Also, he added, this is the deed to your house. As of today, it's no longer in your name. Jessica stared down at the paper like it had turned to flame in her hands. Nathan smiled slightly. It's in hers now. The baby started crying. But no one moved. No one laughed. Not anymore. You're lying, Jessica finally whispered, her voice shaky but trying to sound confident. This is some joke, right? She looked around for backup, but even the relatives who'd laughed the hardest earlier were suddenly silent. A few stepped back. Others looked down at their drinks. No one moved to defend her. I stayed still. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I let the silence stretch, heavy and necessary, because this family only understood power when it showed up with paperwork and a diamond ring. Nathan gently squeezed my hand. Do you want me to explain, or would you rather? My eyes met Jessica's. I saw panic blooming fast, panic I'd worn on my own face for years growing up under their weight. But I didn't blink. I think I'll take it from here, I said. I stepped forward. Past the table covered in deviled eggs and sweet corn. Past my uncle who once told me no man would marry a woman who changed diapers for a living. Past my mother, who still looked like she hadn't fully inhaled since the word wife left Nathan's mouth. You all wanted a story, I began. Let me give you one. I turned to my sister. Remember last year? When you and Brian defaulted on the mortgage. When you told everyone you'd figured it out. That was me. I made the call. I wrote the check. Nathan and I had just gotten married in private. You know why I didn't say anything? Because I wanted to see who you all really were when you didn't think I had anything to offer. Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came. You mocked my job, but I raised your son when you couldn't be bothered. You laughed at my dreams, but I wrote every night after putting your baby to sleep. You said I was nothing. My voice cracked, but only for a second. You all did. I turned toward my mother. You said I was too soft, too emotional, a burden with fantasies. Remember that. Her lips parted, but I kept going. Nathan saw what none of you ever did. He believed in me, not because I was his employee, because I was a fighter. And when we fell in love, we decided to do it quietly. Build something real, away from this circus. Nathan stepped forward again. And now we're building a life together. This house. He nodded at the paper in Jessica's shaking hand. Emily didn't take it out of cruelty. She bought it legally because your loan was falling apart and you were lying about it. She saved you without your knowledge. And when you bragged today like she was beneath you, we decided it was time you knew the truth. Jessica's knees gave a little. She had to lean on the patio table. Her baby started crying again, and this time, even the sound didn't pull any sympathy from anyone watching. My aunt spoke up from the back. Emily, is this true? You saved her house. I nodded. She was days away from foreclosure. And then out of nowhere, my father spoke. Well, if you're married now to him, he paused, glaring at Nathan like he was the devil in a suit. Don't come crawling to us for anything when it ends. I turned slowly to him. Crawl? I repeated. I haven't asked you for a single thing in 10 years. You all closed that door long ago. The only difference now is I've stopped waiting for you to open it again. It was like a fire was ripping through every inch of the backyard. But no one moved. They just watched. Watched the girl they thought would always stay quiet rise and take back the story. I took a deep breath. The wind blew through my hair. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a shadow in this family. I felt like the storm they never saw coming. Jessica hadn't sat down since the moment Nathan walked in. Her hands trembled as she tried to hush the baby now fussing in her arms. Her husband, Brian, stood off to the side like a man who just realized the ship was sinking, and fast. And my mother? She kept adjusting her bracelet, pretending this wasn't the most humiliating afternoon of her life. I should have felt satisfied. I should have soaked in their shame like sunlight. But instead, I just felt tired. Nathan noticed. He leaned closer to me and whispered, You want to leave? I'll have the car brought around. I shook my head slowly. Not yet. Because this wasn't about a dramatic exit. This was about the reckoning. I stepped toward the center of the patio where all eyes could see me. I know what you all think. That I'm the soft one. That I ran away to play nanny while the rest of you built real lives. But let me remind you of something. Your real lives? They're built on borrowed time, bad credit, and fake smiles. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. I kept going. Jessica acts like royalty, but she couldn't pay her utility bills without someone bailing her out. Brian? He's still lying about working from home. I've seen the past due notices in their trash. Don't act like you're better than us, Jessica snapped, her voice rising again. You married rich. That's it. That's all you are now, someone's trophy wife. Nathan stepped forward again, but I held up a hand.
No.
Let me handle this. I locked eyes with her. I wasn't looking to marry anyone. I fell in love with someone who respected my work, my mind, my heart. Someone who read my first manuscript and told me it was publishable, not laughable. Do you even remember the last time you believed in something? Jessica's jaw clenched. You've always needed people to fail, so you can feel tall. But that ends today. Then I turned to the others. If anyone here ever wondered why I disappeared for holidays, or didn't call back, or never brought anyone to dinner, it wasn't because I was ashamed of my life. I paused, letting the air hang heavy. I was ashamed of this one. Complete silence.
Even the kids stopped playing.
And then, finally, my father stood up.
Slow.
Deliberate. He looked at me for a long time. And for once, there was no mockery in his eyes. Just discomfort. Like someone who'd been handed a mirror after decades of living in darkness. You always had a flair for the dramatic, he said at last. But I'll give you this, you were always stronger than I thought. A half admission.
But still not enough.
You thought I was weak because I cried, I said softly. Because I forgave. Because I kept hoping you'd show up for me the way I kept showing up for all of you. I looked around the yard. You all wanted a puppet. Someone to play the part you assigned her. But I rewrote the script. And now, I don't need your applause. I just needed you to see me, one time,
Clearly.
before I go. Jessica stepped forward, her face red. You're not going anywhere with my house. It's not yours anymore. I cut in. And I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to be free. I took Nathan's hand. And I've never felt lighter in my life. The car was waiting at the curb. Sleek, black, windows tinted, like the future I'd never been invited into, but built myself brick by brick behind their backs. Nathan nodded to the driver, but didn't open the door. Not yet. He stood by me, quietly protective, but with the same look he'd given me the first time he ever read my notebook cover to cover. Admiration. Respect. Love that didn't need to speak loud to be heard. Jessica wasn't finished, though. She stormed across the patio, shoved the baby into Brian's arms, and came right up to me. Her eyes were burning, but behind the anger, I could see it. Fear. The kind of fear that only surfaces when someone realizes the pedestal they stood on wasn't real. It was borrowed. This is revenge, isn't it? She hissed. You've been waiting to humiliate me. I tilted my head slightly, watching her face.
No, Jessica.
If this were revenge, you'd be living out of a motel, and I'd be watching from a window. I stepped closer. This is just truth. And truth stings more than payback ever could. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. No witty comeback. No loud defense. For the first time in my life, my sister didn't know what to say. And then my mother stepped in. Always perfectly dressed. Always hosting. Always playing queen bee even in her silence. But her eyes, God, her eyes were wide now. Not with shock. With something closer to recognition. You married him, she said, almost in disbelief. As if it wasn't the deed, or the new last name, or the ring that stunned her, but the possibility that someone she dismissed had outgrown her grasp. I nodded. And he respects me, I said. Not just as his wife, but as someone who never stopped fighting for her own worth, even when her own mother told her she had none. She winced.
Good.
You always said dreams don't pay bills, I continued. But mine did. I sold my book last week. It's going into production. And guess what? The dedication page doesn't mention a single one of you. That one cut. I could see it. And still, none of them said sorry. Not one of them. Because apologies require reflection. And they weren't built for that. They were built for image. Appearances. Denial. Nathan opened the car door for me. I stepped inside. But just before I sat down, I turned back. To anyone who ever made me feel invisible, I said clearly, this is your final look. I hope it lasts. Jessica turned away, arms crossed. My mother blinked too fast. Brian looked like he wanted to disappear. My father stood there stiff as concrete. But no one said a word. No protest. No fake hugs. Just silence. And I realized then that silence was louder than any applause. We pulled away from the curb in silence, Nathan's hand resting over mine as the car glided down the road. The backyard was behind us now. So were the sneers, the whispers, the years of being the family's afterthought. It was over. Not just the party, the chapter. And something about that made the air feel different, lighter. Like I could finally breathe without holding back the exhale. I turned to Nathan. Was I too harsh? He looked at me the way he always did, like every part of me, even the uncertain ones, deserved to be seen. You were honest. They just weren't ready for it. I smiled faintly. I think I've waited my whole life for today. He leaned closer. They weren't laughing when I called you my wife. I laughed. A real one this time. The kind I never got to have at family dinners. That night, I sat by our balcony window, watching the city lights twinkle. My laptop was open, manuscript file still glowing on the screen. I wasn't writing. I didn't need to. Not tonight. Because tonight wasn't about creating. It was about becoming. I'd spent years surviving, smiling through insults, babysitting through judgment, writing in stolen hours between everyone else's chaos. And I'd done it quietly, praying someone would notice. But no one ever did. Until Nathan. He'd noticed when I stayed late just to clean spilled juice off the kitchen tile without being asked. When I jotted story ideas on post-it notes between nap schedules. When I read bedtime stories in voices animated enough to make even his tired, hardened heart soften. He didn't just see me. He chose me. And I'd chosen myself, finally, by no longer shrinking to fit the role my family shoved me into. A few days later, a package arrived at our penthouse. No return label. Just a slim envelope tucked inside with handwriting I recognized immediately. Jessica. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a photo of us as kids, me and her, barefoot in the backyard, covered in mud, laughing so hard our eyes were closed. Taped to the back was a note. I didn't know I was becoming the person who would hurt you. I'm not asking for anything. Just thank you. For saving my house. For still showing up, even when we didn't deserve it.
Jessica. I stared at it for a long time.
Not forgiveness. Not redemption. But something real. And sometimes that was more than enough. The following week, I sat in front of a packed bookstore. My first reading. My first published novel. The crowd was quiet as I closed the last page and looked up. I used to think I needed permission to matter, I told them. But you don't need a title, or a ring, or approval to be enough. You just need to remember that quiet doesn't mean powerless. A woman in the front row teared up. And as the room filled with applause, I realized they might have called me just a nanny with a dream.
But now,
I was a wife, an author, and finally my own damn story.